Okay, today we're here at Aztek in downtown Cleveland. We're speaking with, in the orange Aztek shirt, is Dave Skorepa, the Chief Creative Officer of Aztek, and Matt Mesenger, the Director of Web Marketing. Guys, it's tough to develop for all the different apps that are out there, all the different browsers, not the apps, the devices that are out there, the different browsers. Most people in the industry prefer standards, HTML5 and CSS3 and other standards. But the problem is there's a lot of either devices or browsers that don't follow the standards yet, or people are using old stuff. How do you deal with all the diversity that's out there?
So we try to test on as many devices as possible, but at some point that becomes pretty impractical. Having every single kind of device with the fragmentation that's out there gets very expensive and very unrealistic. And beyond that, it's by the time you were to acquire all those devices, they'd already start to become outdated. So we just got some iPad 2s not that long ago. They're already outdated because we're already onto the new version, right? iPad minis are coming out. We're already on iPhone 5, and I just got an iPhone 4S a couple of months ago. So it's really, really hard to keep up on that stuff. Certainly we do our best on the newer stuff to keep up with everybody, but it's the older stuff that gives us a bigger problem. And at some point, you have to just take a stand and decide to have a cutoff on what you're supporting and not supporting. It was great to see a lot of prominent websites recently finally make a stand, and there's been a major stand against IE6 that we're just, as an industry, sick of supporting it, and IE7 soon to follow. And that, even Microsoft is pushing people to say, okay, yeah, we admit it, IE6 was horrible, but look, we're really making a major step forward with the new versions of IE9 and above, and they're actually decent browsers and ones that we want to get everybody over to. So it's, in our minds, better to focus on the vast majority and concentrate your efforts there than continue to support old technology that only a small fraction of your audience may still be using.
So will you actually tell, post a message like some websites do that, to view this website properly, you have to have a modern browser, an updated browser, or do you go for a least common denominator, give them an optional site, or what do you do? Well,
so we've seen a lot of different options. My preference is not to, I hate going to sites where you still see that really old, outdated, best viewed in Microsoft IE5 and above kind of thing. I've seen some really clever solutions where if they detect what browser you're on, they give you a special message that say, hey, dude, come on, upgrade already, get with the times. But otherwise, we just try to provide a graceful degradation, and as long as you're still able to use the site, it's okay, in our opinion, to kind of back out and say, okay, well, you just don't get some of the bells and whistles. But if you're still using that, you don't know what you're missing, because you've got that same problem on the entire internet, not just on the site that we built. Every site you go to is going to probably be an awful experience, not work right, not look right, and if you don't know any better, well, sorry about your luck.
And I'm assuming, I said it, but I'm assuming that you guys have confirmed that standards are really what you're looking for, what the industry is looking for. I've seen some instances where there's, for example, Chrome-only apps out there. What do you think of stuff like that, where it's going away from the pure standards, HTML5, CSS3, and things like that?
Yeah, standards are nice, but so you reference HTML5 and CSS3. Well, HTML5, the spec hasn't actually been approved yet. It's safe to start using it, and most modern browsers are supporting it, but there actually aren't standards yet. They're still adding and removing things from the spec day to day. But standards are great, but when it comes to mobile, there's still really no standards. Responsive web design is kind of an emerging thing. There's really no standards. There's a lot of really smart people with a lot of really great ideas, but nobody said this is the way to do it. And it's changing so fast. I'm not really all that, confident that they're going to get to that anytime soon. If they're not even slated to approve HTML5 spec until 2014 anyway. This is kind of a slow process, and there's not really a consensus about how to get it done very quickly. So they're helpful, but for the most part, we can't really count on them yet for some of those newer technologies.
So you've got to understand that, with the hardware diversity out there, for a customer of yours, they may be, their visitors may be looking at a website from a tablet, from a laptop, from a desktop, with huge screens, from a phone. How do you get it across? How do you get that user experience and the customers that the customer wants to provide to all those platforms? I mean, there's some things, on a smartphone, a hovering effect isn't going to matter, or Flash or something like that. How do you convince the customer, and second, how do you make it an optimal experience for the visitors on all these different devices?
Sure. So Flash is easy. We just don't use it. The hover thing, we try to build with touch experiences in mind from the beginning. So when we're designing, we try to make sure that our buttons and our navigation and different elements are already considering a touch state as far as how big are the spaces that somebody's actually pressing, what happens when somebody hovers a menu versus, can we make it that it's on click, or can we go and avoid things that are dependent on hover effects only, so we have a touch-friendly fallback, or we consider touch from the idea of considering mobile first really goes a long way. If it works in mobile, it's still going to work in your desktop version. So starting from mobile and building up to the desktop version helps you refocus your priorities and align things in a way that makes sure that nobody really is overlooked.
So by refocusing your priorities, Matt, is that something where the customer's got to look at their website and say, all right, we have this very limited real estate, and we only want to get the most important stuff across because we can't give them a 42-inch flat screen on their desk experience? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, so one of the things that with the hardware diversity, mobile devices, different screen sizes, one of the things, and Dave alluded to this, that it's forced us as web marketers and web developers and designers to do is think about, okay, there's all this stuff, but at the end of the day, what's the most important thing or things that you want that person to do on the site? So when you think about it that way and start small and kind of build out from there, so smaller screens, what's the absolute most important thing that needs to be included there? You're gonna preserve that positive user experience by keeping that focus every step along the way.
All right, so that's a look at some of the diversity of both software, the browsers, and the platforms that people have to write to from Dave and Matt here at Aztek. Thanks, guys.